There we go. Excellent. Okay, so this talk was going to be about how to use Flexbox with containers, but as of the new version of Elementor, you'll also get access to Grid as well. So this is now how to use containers, Flexbox, and Grid. So we'll get a twofer. Okay, so we try and start on time. Trying to linger along. We do the format's roughly the same. We do a welcome introductions, then run through a little bit of what's new in Elementor. Today's topic, a little bit of time for Q&A at the end, and we try and finish around about 7 o'clock, if not a little bit before, so you can get on with your day and do stuff. We have an organising committee. John and Julia is not here just now. They're actually overseas. So that's, they'll introduce themselves next time. For me, if you haven't met me before, my name is Will. I'm one of the organizers from here. My background really with WordPress, I've been using WordPress since 2006. I'm more of a developer than a front-end person. I specialize in automation. So using tools like Uncanny Automator, Zapier, Make, that sort of stuff, really connecting WordPress with some middle toolware to connect to third-party systems in there. That's my speciality. Let's move on. We do have a code of conduct. I will copy that down in the chat. Basically, it's be nice to each other and respectful of everyone. So as always, I'm going to open up the floor. If anyone wants to say hi and basically what they do, and then I'll open the floor for everyone for a few minutes and just give a brief introduction of who you are, how you use Elementor or WordPress, and more importantly, what you are drinking. So I've got 2 drinks here. I've got water. Oh, can't see that water. And I have my big mug of tea. I love hot drinks. This is decaf tea. So I drink about a litre of that in each go. And so if anyone wants to talk, then you can put your hand up or just unmute yourself and I'll open the floor to everyone.
Hey, I'll have a say hello. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes. Nope, nobody wants to say anything tonight. That's okay.
Yep, got me.
We shall continue on. Oh, Stefan wants to say, yep, okay. Stefan, unmute and introduce yourself.
Oh, hi everyone. Just a WordPress freelancer in my spare time, and I've been dealing with WordPress since 2017, Elementor since 2018, and yeah, I like the way how page builders simplify the web development experience.
I can't hear you, Stefan.
Oh, yeah, I think my earphones are kind of broken. Is that better?
Make sure that your mic is connected. Oh, you can hear him. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the phone now. Yeah. Basically, I was saying I'm a WordPress freelancer in my spare time. I've been doing WordPress since 2017 and Elementor since 2018. And I just like how page builders simplify the development process. And I'm also been using GCP to host WordPress and using Cloudflare. So yeah, this is a general summary. I went to UTS as well as a student. Thank you.
Can you actually hear me, Will?
Oh, I can hear you, Murray. I don't know about Will.
Okay, I think Will can't hear me. Can anyone else hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Murray.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me, Will? I was just trying to...
Yes, I can now. Someone went wrong. The connection got cut off. So, yep, I'm back online. I can hear everyone now. Sorry about that.
Okay. No, I was going to introduce myself as well. I tried to just before, but I don't think something was going weird. Similar story, just I've been working with WordPress for a while, started out building my own CMSs and PHP and MySQL and all that kind of thing. got involved with WordPress because it took care of a whole lot of stuff. I didn't want to recreate the wheel. I've been working I used to do quite a lot of back-end stuff. I still do, but I've been working quite a lot with JavaScript and scripting and CSS and HTML stuff, accessibility. So lots of stuff with that. And yeah, so really interested to see. I really like Flexbox, like it very much more over the inner sections and that kind of stuff, because I tend to find that it flows a lot better and I think it's easier to build with. And I think that that's going to be greater for, creating more compatible websites with a wider range of devices. And I'm really, really hoping that sort of Grid, not too sold on how Grid's being used in Elementor at the moment, but I'm hoping that it sort of picks its knees up a little bit. But yeah, but it's good steps. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this meeting and learning a few new tricks.
Thanks, Murray. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm happy to say hello if you can hear me now.
Yep, I can.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So my name's Clinton. I've been working with WordPress for probably 5 or 6 years now, and still probably a very limited apart from setting WordPress up and throwing Elementor in so I can actually build some sites. I started with the D word, Divi, and was converted over by Will, Roby Lawrence. Some of the others might know.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So Robes and I have worked together pretty much since I started, and he's been my mentor and developer, I suppose. And he got me into Elementor. And look, I just love it. I mean, I probably care more about how things look and work and get a bit stressed if they're not working. And certainly site speed and all those sorts of things are important. And what I've found with my limited knowledge of containers and things like that, that it's starting to speed up those sites, which is really good. So I'm still, look, if you mention the word code or CSS, I go and have a little cry under the corner because it's like another language. Robian has taught me or tried to teach me many times, and I just glaze over. It's completely, I just can't understand it. So I get the concept, but so this is sort of doing it for me, I suppose. And I just need a little bit more help with getting it all to flow right and understanding how all these containers work properly. And so yeah, I'm a little bit lost in that. I can build a site and I can sell very well. I'm a salesman. I've got a corporate gig where I run a territory and I'm in sales. So I'm great at getting jobs in. I'm building them out, but I probably am slow at my builds just based on, just need to speed them up a bit. To answer your last question, I'm drinking green apple Gatorade. I've been a little bit ill, so I've I'm pretending that sugar's helping me.
Love to have you here, Clinton. And yeah, Roby is such a top chap.
Yeah,
loving the bits. Great guy. Okay, let's jump back into the slide. I think that's the right one here. Yes, there we go. Okay, a little bit of a roundup of Elementor updates before we kick off into the main presentation. Let's see. So there's a couple of change logs. If you're interested in keeping up to date with what is happening in the Elementor world, there's a change log for Elementor Free and there's a change log for Elementor Pro because they're both separate products there. There's not been a lot happening in Elementor last month. So I know we had these talks at the beginning of the month, so we kind of cycle for the month before. Just a lot of fixes, a lot of security fixes and tweaks for that. So Elementor Free, it's mainly been security fixes. So I've seen a lot of point releases come out. And for Elementor Pro, same, because it includes those fixes, but specifically a lot of accessibility changes. So if you look down the change log, there's been a lot of accessibility changes for those, and quite a lot of tweaks as well, because they've kind of changed the interface. You've seen that kind of black interface that they have, and they've got the new admin bar at the top, the toolbar. So there's been lots of tweaks to the way that things are presented just in the last couple of releases, but nothing major has been announced last month. Moving on, there is a new beta that's out. So version 3.14, it's beta 2. It's got some new things in there. So if you want the beta, you have to subscribe to the nightly build. So again, it's a separate plugin. So you get the bleeding edge nightly builds, and it has all these things as experiments. So one of the big things is carousel widget for nesting elements. So they're going to be introducing a lot of nesting elements. So embedding carousels within carousels, or things like that. So that's going to be in an experiment. There's a loop grid static item position. These first two are for Pro only. So what that is, if you're building your loop grid, you can now have a static item in there. So for example, you might want to put a promotion for a seasonal sale in the middle of like maybe in a 3-column, maybe the second one. Or some advertisements, some banner advertising, or some corporate advertising. So now you can actually put static images along with all your products or your posts, like your carousels, which is quite good. I like that one. There is an important note that comes with 3.14 in that the previous loop carousel, they've changed some stuff around. So if you have been creating loop carousels, this one's probably going to break some stuff because they've redone the navigation elements for that. And there's a new global styles preview. So whereas last month we had not very much, when this one gets released, hopefully in a few weeks' time, there's going to be quite a lot of extra things to play with. I actually love this global styles preview. I've got it on this slide here. So you'll be able to do a drop down and click on your style guide preview, and it's going to show you all the different colors you have, your primary, secondary, your body text, and your accent, and it's going to run through paragraphs. It's going to have H1s, H2s, paragraphs, so you can actually see what it's going to be, all your fonts and the sizes and the colors. So I think it's going to be really handy. In the past, I usually create a page that's got, your header 1, your header 2, your header 3, you've got list items, you've got paragraph text, you've got stuff like that, and just to make sure they're all good. But this thing kind of does that for you. So I think that's going to be really, really handy things. Some of the things that Elementor puts in, things like the notes, things like this little global style guide, they're small, relatively small in comparison to the big features, but I find some of these small ones really, really handy and useful in the process of creating websites. There's an Elementor roadmap. So you can go to elementor.com/roadmap, and these are useful to keep an eye on. I usually go there at the beginning of the month just to see what's on there. I just give you a little bit of an idea as to what the developer team are looking at and what the priorities are and what might be coming up as experiments in beta versions for the future. So this is a snapshot from the one in June. So in planning, they've got team collaboration for the hosting, got nested carousel, nested accordion. So they're really going big on nested elements. Filters for loop builder, so that you can then change that programmatically, which would be good. Then in progress, they're actually working on some stuff in the hosting, so FTP access and the migration tool as well, and a little bit about CSS selectors as well. But nothing in the beta, nothing has moved through to beta yet. But if you keep an eye on that every month, you'll be able to see what the devs are working on. So I really do like that. It gives you an idea for that, and I just love to keep up to date with that every month. Okay, so jumping into the main talk, how to use Flexbox containers, a little bit of CSS Grid as well. Now, I'm going to be showing you how to create these things in Elementor, but I'm going to run through a little bit of theory first, just so those who haven't used this particular type of system before just have like a ground level basics as to what they are. Okay, so what is Flexbox? The structure of Flexbox is super easy. You've basically got a container, and within the container, you've got items. So it's super simple. The container has controls allowing you to dictate the flow of all the items inside. And individual items themselves can have their own flow control as well. So as well as telling all the items which direction to go, you can also tweak the particular items and give them a particular position within that container. Now, items can be different sizes within the Flex container. So we're not just talking about the same group of things. You can have different sizes, so different types of layouts. This is why Flexbox is called Flexbox. It's got a flexible layout for those. Now, the main idea behind the Flexbox control is it works with two axes. Now, you've got a main axis, and that's the flex direction that the items flow in. So if you don't switch anything on, if you don't change it, then it's going to be from left to right, from top to bottom. That's the way it's going to go. But you've also got a cross axis, which is perpendicular to the main axis. So this is when you get to see the CSS commands, which you don't really get to see within Elementor because they're all kind of hidden behind UIs. But if you look into the CSS behind flow control, you'll see, axis and cross axis and main axis. You can actually set all these different things up. So that's the main way it works. The axis direction can be set to a row for horizontal direction, or a column for vertical direction. This example here has a flow direction of the container set to row. So the main axis is horizontal and the cross axis is vertical. So the stuff's going to flow from left to right and then down, but then the cross axis, you can change the position up and down of the particular items, padding and justify center and stuff like that. Here's the column example where the main axis is now vertical and the cross axis is horizontal. This type of flow control, this flex control, allows you to have relatively complex layouts that are fully responsive without having to have that huge amount of layers of divs and other supporting HTML structure, which is why page builders like Divi, like Beaver Builder, like Oxygen, like Elementor in the past have been really, really kind of heavy in the structure, because to support all this different layouts, they've had to really work hard to embed, stuff within other stuff, and then, control stuff by floating and padding and all that sort of thing. Flexbox, that kind of sorts that particular issue and allows you to bring the content further up higher towards the surface without, as much structural stuff down below. So, for example, items in the Flex container, they can actually be reversed in order. They can be centered, justified, aligned to the top, aligned to the bottom, or aligned to the middle of the container. And now this saves a whole heap of CSS tweaking. So with margins, paddings, floatings, tables, God forbid, and absolute values that we had to use before to try and position stuff, within a container. It was really difficult to control, and it was not responsive at all. So here are some images that I stole from csstricks.com. I need to just give an idea of some of the basic flow control concepts of this Flexbox. So these are the items within the container. The first one is the flex direction. So this one is the default, the first one on the top right, where the items are flowing from the top left and they're going along to the right, and then they go down to the bottom as well. So they can have them wrapping along, and you can change the flow that they go in. Flex direction as well, you can have them go up and down, so it's the column, so it's a top to bottom or bottom to top, so you can reverse the order for those. We're talking about order, so the one in the middle is flex order. By default, the display order of the content is what's rendered in HTML, so what's in your content block in Elementor or in Gutenberg. That's the way by default the items are going to be displayed. However, you can change the order completely. So if you want some of the middle stuff to be the front, you can just change that particular item order and then push it up within those. And now we can start to see being able to change the flex order really kind of brings in a kind of more complicated layer. So you can think of maybe table sorting, item sorting, particular position elements that you want for those. And this is where things like the this new loop grid static item that's in the beta. This is what makes this possible. Now you can have this static element just kind of sitting there in the middle, because using a flex order, you can see that particular static item I just want to sit in the middle there. So Flexbox is allowing us Elementor to put in more functionality, more features within the content layer. Another good thing about the Flex is you can grow and shrink items within that container. You can change the sizes of the items, growing them and shrinking them. The other items automatically adjust into fit to the remaining space. So if you make one bigger, for example, the number 2 there, it has been grown, then the ones on either side will shrink to fit that particular container. And you don't need to worry about paddings or margins. It's all kind of set automatically. Now, to be able to do that in normal CSS is a nightmare, because you have to work out percentage-wise and stuff, but Flexbox works all that out in its native CSS, which is great. And it's got automatic wrapping as well. So that's the bottom one. So when a particular item gets too big for its row or column, then it will snap down into the next row or the next column automatically without you having to do any CSS or moving stuff around. So really flexible. You've got lots of control over the items, the way they flow, their order, the sizes, and the way that they kind of snap into that container. So that is a very basics of Flexbox. Without getting into the CSS, without into the code, there's a whole heap more details for Flex that you can go into, but that's just the basic concepts of Flex. So CSS Grid, it is similar concept to Flexbox. You've got a container and you've got items within this, but this is used for a more precise, structured layout. So if you need items to fit to the same height, for example, the best example would be WordPress posts, the post archive. If you're wanting everything to go across, so you've got the image in the top, you've got the title, you've got the text, the excerpt that flows, but you've all got the same height. Then this is a really good fit for that. Let's see, it's easier to work with than Flexbox as well. If you need to create more complicated layouts, for example, rather than use CSS and divs and all that sort of thing, then you can definitely get more complicated layouts for both rows and columns as well. Now, CSS Grid, it completely replaces tables and floats and is 100% responsive as well. So a lot of times, if you're trying to get equal height containers in a row, that particular style, that particular grid style, you probably if you're not a developer, jump to a table. Because tables are probably the closest thing you can get to that particular grid structure without having to code that yourself. And again, trying to do that just with CSS and floating items and margins, which is just like really, really complicated. So we're loving the CSS Grid. So here's a couple of items, again, that I stole from css-tricks.com. So you're not just bound by these, uniform rows and columns. You can have more complicated grid type layouts. So an example here is we can see the item A, the orange one, is kind of spanning over two rows, but in a column. Then you've got item B on the top row. Then you've forced item C down into a column. And then we've got item D up again on the first row. The white boxes are just spacing. So that in itself, if you're trying to create spacing within this particular layout, just using CSS would be a nightmare. But CSS Grid does that automatically. And again, item E is being forced into a column right at the very end. And just by a few simple boxes and checks, then you can move that all those items around and create a new grid style as well. So you can see in the second example, we've got A, B, C, D, and E all up there. So it's really, really flexible in the way that you do the layouts. So you might be asking, Flexbox versus CSS Grid, which one do you choose? Well, Flexbox is made for what they call one-dimensional layouts. So it can work either on rows or columns, but not both. So you're basically setting the direction of the items to flow. You can either have them as a row, so they flow in a row direction, or you can have them as a column, so they're going up and down in the column, but you can't have both. Whereas grids, CSS grids, they are two-dimensional. So they can work on the items both within the rows and the columns. And that's what allows for these kind of more complex layouts where you're forcing items kind of out of order, but you're kind of clustering them into either the row or spanning columns as well. So really, to make a choice between the two, it's content first versus layout first. So if you're thinking about the difference between the two, you can think that in the top Flexbox example, the item's going to adjust to the size to fit the content. So with Flexbox, when you've got your content items, the content you put in the item grows that particular content box. So if you've got a long bit of content, then the box, the item's going to be a lot longer. Within Grid, then it's layout first. So in Grid, and that's the bottom example, the content fits into the layout. So if you're wondering which system to use, you really have to think about at the start, what's more important to your design? Is it the content, that's driving the design, or is it the layout that's important to you and you want the content to fit into the layout? Couple of questions here. I can see Murray saying flex start and flex end change from left and right. That's right. Yep. And Stefan asks, how does it differ to Elementor sections? And do we just drag and drop? Yep. Okay. I'm going to jump into a demo. So I'll show you the sections and the containers and stuff like that. Some of the options there, Steph. A couple of bits of reading for you. I'll copy them down into the comments here. So for Flexbox, have a look at that one. Of course, you can Google that, and there's heaps of videos and stuff, but those are a couple of really good complete guides to both Flexbox and CSS Grid, and they're aimed at beginners as well. So, you know, if you're just starting out, those are two really good articles, and then you can kind of follow up with all your research. Okay, that's it for me waffling about theory. I'm going to jump over and to a demo and let you see some of the stuff in action. There we go. This is the dashboard. Okay. Right. I just might do. No, I'll leave it as is. I was going to switch my camera, but it's too difficult. So you just have to look at my ear, right? Okay, so here we have, I've just got like a test site up here. What I'm going to do is I'll show you where to switch on the experiment. So you come to Elementor settings. It's in features, and you scroll down to the ongoing experiments and Flexbox container. So you set that one to active. And once that's done, then you can then have the grid container and then set that one to active, scroll down and save your changes. And once that's done, then you'll be able to use the containers. So you've got to have two of those if you want to play around with both Flexbox and Grid. Flexbox is release candidate, which means it's more than likely going to go into the next version of Elementor. Grid has just come out as alpha, so it's just been put into last release. So they're still playing around with that. You know, just note yourself, if you're using these on live sites, you probably shouldn't use the Grid container. You're probably safe with Flexbox at the moment, but Grid's likely to change quite a bit. As Murray alluded, there's not as huge amount of options for Grid in Elementor as there should be, as kind of backs the CSS that you can do. So that'll probably change in the next few versions. So that's how to switch it on. Let's just jump in and we'll add a page and we'll show you how to use this. Okay, so I'm just going to do a test. Okay, we'll publish that and then edit with Elementor. Okay, so I've already got customizer stuff. So I've got a little logo here. I've already got a little menu for this one as well. But I'm going to show you how to create all that stuff anyway. So what I'll do is I'll go down here. Let's move this out of the way. And I'm going to set the page layout to be Elementor canvas. And that's going to give us a full page with nothing there, just so I can start with a blank canvas. I'm going to do navigator as well. So I'm going to snap that onto the side, just so we can see, you know, what's being created when we're creating all this stuff. So first of all, I'm going to say right out the bat, Elementor, the old sections that you've been using in Elementor, when you switch on these experiments for Flexbox and CSS Grid, you're going to have an option to convert these, to convert your old sections into containers. Don't do that, and I'll show you why. Okay, so I'm going to load a template that I created earlier. And this has some old stuff. So in here, it's got a countdown to Christmas. So we've got 206 days until Christmas. Woohoo! Get your presents ready. But we can see in the navigator here, if we click down that, so we've got a section, and then we've got a column, and then within that, we've got heading, which is this one, and then the countdown there. So this is the typical way that you would create stuff in Elementor. You get a section first, and then if you want stuff, you know, across the way, you create your column, and that could be like just a 1 column or 2 column or however many you want it. But here's what's going to happen. Once you've enabled these Flexbox, you get this convert down here. So when we're in a section, you can convert to container. So let's just do a convert and see what it does. So it's created a duplicate and it's converted these to containers. So if we have a look now at this one here, highlight that, and look at the navigator, what we can see here now is we've got the top container, which is Flexbox, but now we've got a container which has replaced the column. So all Elementor is doing is it's spinning through the old items, and it's just creating a container for, you know, the containers basically. But that's no longer needed. We don't need this column anymore. All we need is the container and the items within it. So this thing here is redundant. So if you've got a column, and if you've got like an inner column within that, if you convert that, it's going to replace a column with a container, and it's going to replace the inner column with another container. And all you're doing basically is generating more HTML, more wrapping around that. So you really, ideally, don't want to convert your old sections. You want to try and recreate them in Flexbox if you can. Otherwise, you're just adding extra stuff in there. Okay, so that's the one thing. Let's get rid of that. You could drag the two boxes here to the top and get rid of that other container. But if you've got a complicated layout, Murray, then that when you're dragging stuff around, sometimes it can take you a while to get that right as well. Yeah, but what I basically take away is don't just convert and just leave it as is. You need to go in and remove all that duplicate stuff. So let's build a few things here. Now, there's a couple of ways to use the containers. You can drag it straight on here, and then you've got your container. And then under the layout, you can choose the container layout to be Flexbox or CSS Grid. Sorry, I don't know why. It's bad admin CSS at the back end. So I'll hover over the options so you can see them. So that's one way you can do that. Or if you're actually creating one within the UI here, you can click on it. It's going to ask you which one you want to start off with. So Flexbox or Grid. If you want Flexbox, then it's going to ask you which direction do you want your content to flow initially, or do you want kind of a grid layout. And similar to Grid, it's going to ask you what type of structure do you want to start with for those. So you can do either. The UI is kind of a bit handier if you've got a visual brain. Otherwise, just drag the container across there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the container. I'm happy with Flexbox. That's where it defaults to for those. And what I'm going to do here is maybe visualize this as a landing page. So I'm going to do a logo and header. And I'll show you how we use Flexbox rather than having to float stuff and use inner columns for that. So we've got our Flexbox here. Let's just add a couple of items. So we'll add a site logo in here, and we drag it on. So this is bringing it in from the customizer. That's United States Air Force logo, which spectacularly looks like Starfleet. And I'll do a heading, nav. So WordPress menu, and we'll bring it in for there. Okay, so we can see right away we've got a container, and then we've got our items in the container. So no additional HTML. So we're getting straight at the content, which is good. It's good for Google. It's good for site speed as well. No additional stuff that's happening. So I'm going to click on the container and have a look here, and just have a quick look at what we're doing here. So container layout is Flexbox. And then we've got the items here. So here we control the items within the Flexbox container. Now, if no icons are highlighted, then that means it's going to use the first one for each of these: direction, justify content, and align items. So for example, this one here, we've got a direction is going across the way. So it's basically a row. No, actually it's vertical. Oh, shouldn't do that. Anyway, so we've got row, so it's the direction we can flow. So we've changed to row. So now we're doing the horizontal. You can change it to a column, which is putting them, vertical. You can reverse the row. So now our first item becomes the last, and we can reverse the column as well. So now our first item is the bottom. So those are the direction of flow of the items within that. Now, if we're building navigation, of course, we want the row to be horizontal for those. And then we can work out, we don't want the menu over there. So this is where the justify content comes in. So several options here at the start. So this is Flex Start. So it goes from left to right. There's center, so you can center everything in the middle. There's Flex End, so that puts it over to the right-hand side. And then we've got these other options here. So we've got space evenly. It uses the available space, the width, and it puts them in an, you know, like, what am I saying? Justifying them, not justifying, aligning them properly. And then we've got this one, which is space around, and then this one, which is space between. This one here is probably what we want, space between. So it's using the space between the items and then forcing them to the other side. And then we've got align items as well. So at the start, we can have center, we can have end, and we can have stretch them. It stretches them between the top. So we want center for those. So we're going to center the logo and center this. Now, I could have went into the item itself. So if you have a look at the items, so for example, WordPress menu, because all the items within the Flex container are Flex items themselves, then they've got the same controls in here. So you can set the alignment for those to be left, right, justified. You can select the layout to be vertical, horizontal, and drop down. So you've got controls within the items themselves, separate from the main container. But that looks okay. So that's really, really quick. Ability to create just a header for your page. Let's see, go back to this one. I'll update that. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll just do a main image and a title. So again, we'll create a container, and I'm going to use Flexbox again for this, and I want the direction of stuff just to go down the way. So let's use the graphical and GUI this time. Okay, so let's just make this minimum height. Let's make that a little bit bigger, maybe 500, I'll do. Let's just go to style and put a background in there, an image. I've got some images here that I loaded up earlier. So we'll use the next Galaxy. Background for there. And again, we've got, you know, just the default styles that we can use. So the position, I'll go with center, attachment, I'll do fixed, repeat, no repeat. And display size, I think we'll do cover for there. And I'll do a background overlay as well, because that's quite bright. I'm going to have text over the top. So background, we'll choose the black, and opacity. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay. Right. And then let's just add a few things to this container. We'll do a heading, and we'll do another heading. Okay. I'll change some of the colors for that. So I'll change that to header 1. And change the color to white, because the blue's a bit nasty. And this one, finally, that is header 2, and we'll change that color to, yeah, that'll do. Okay. So again, we can see we've got a container here, just like a top level container, and then we've got head and heading. So there's no need for any columns or anything like that. And the good thing about this is that we can now use our Flex to control where these items are sitting. So if we go back to layout, I'm looking to get the stuff in the middle somewhere. So I am going to do center. That looks good for those. Then we can align items in the middle as well. At the end, and this is all, rather than use floating, it's all using the Flexbox stuff, which is lovely. I'm going to leave them at the start. I could force it to the bottom as well, or space them out, which looks a bit odd. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, I quite like them just in the middle together. So I'll just give that a little bit of. Yep, and that'll do. Okay, now, little tip. What I like to do is, if you can have, that's fine if you want like a separate navigator here, but ideally, I think I want to move that up a little bit. So I'm going to go to advanced and margin, and it's just minus 100. Oops, forgot to turn them all off. Delete that, delete that, delete that. Okay, so I'm just going to move that up, probably 120. There we go. Now you can see that the logo has disappeared, which is a bit of a pain. But what we can do is we can click on the site logo, go to this advanced Z index, which is your depth, 99, and up the logo pops again. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now we've got the hidden bit there. relatively easy to do in Flex. Let's have a look at CSS Grid. And drag the 2 blocks to the top container. Yep. Okay, so let's do a grid. Select your structure. I want 3 columns. There we go. Okay, 3 columns. I just want the 1 row. So there we go. So what I'm going to do here is this is a little trick. So when you're building items that have got text and an icon or text and a button or text and image, what I like to use is the call to action widget, CTA. Where is it? Call to action. There we go. Drag one in there. Now, the reason I quite like using this one is because if you're trying to do this type of layout, which is quite common in like a landing page, when you've got like an image and a heading for that. If you were to try and build that out just with normal containers, then you're probably looking to do a container, you know, and then put some extra stuff in there with additional containers. So you're going to end up with more structure just to support this particular layout. Because a call to action, it's actually kind of built in as the widget. So I like to use these call to actions on my landing page because it's less structural content if you should try and build out this particular layout format just yourself. Okay, so what I like to do is I'll change some of the images. I like to play around with the first one, and then I can just duplicate the rest. So what we're going to have here is just 3 information boxes. So there's the first one that we've got. If you don't need a call to action, just if you're looking for just the image and the heading and the text, if you go down to the content and in the button text, you just get rid of that click here, then the button disappears. So I don't want a button on those. I just want an image and some text. So this could be a testimonial. It could be some benefits or features of that. The image, let's look. Yep, style. So the image for height, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so we can get the full thing. 400 will do. And you can adjust the content width and height as well. So you can change the spacing for things as well. But I'm gonna move that. I think that's okay. Let's see. For the container, let's just make that a little bit bigger just so you can see what's going on. So I'll make that a little bit big. Okay. So once you're happy with that effect, then you can just duplicate those. So right hand side and duplicate, and what the CSS grid it'll automatically move it into the next grid item, which is nice. And then we can just change the images, and you can change the text as well. But I'm just going to do this quickly because it's just a demonstration for those. You can, of course, in the content, you can change that to whatever. So maybe you want like H3 rather than H2, just whatever the flow of your items are. So that looks okay. So now that's really, really quickly, just 3 content boxes, but it's using the call to action. So it's less structural stuff that you have to build with, which is good. So I like using that. And again, with the container, they're all flex items as well. So if the flex box doesn't have as much options for the CSS behind the grids, I'm sure that will come with other versions of Elementor. But at the moment, you can see, I can change the layout to Flexbox, and you can see the items change for that and grid. So we've got different items for those. We can easily change the number of columns for those. Now, trying to do that within CSS or trying to do that within all kind of sections and columns, it's not as easy because, all the columns, they've got the padding and stuff, whereas the CSS grid works all that for you. So you can easily change the number of columns quickly, and the rows as well. You can add onto the number of rows that you want. You've got you can change the column and row gaps between them, and again, the CSS grid works all that automatically, so you don't have to play around with the margins and paddings, percentage wise that you would do. We've got flow as well, so we can do row or you can do column. You won't see much of a difference here because we've got them all kind of together. And again, you can justify the items. So we're not going to see a lot of there because they're fitting in quite nicely with the CSS grid. But once you start to do more complex patterns, and this is where they're going to need more controls in here to do the more complicated ones, then you'll start to see things shifting around. But you won't see much change in the structure there. Now, because I've made this a lot bigger, the container a lot bigger, what I can do is I can go into the individual items as well. And again, you know, you've got the particular directions and stuff within those. Let's just have a look. So vertical positions and things. So you can put them to the top, put them to the bottom, and things like that. But your basic CSS grid is going to be the containers and showing you how you align all those up and down. So that's it. You can easily duplicate things for those. There's not too much of the control for the grids at the moment. I'm sure more will come in once it's kind of out of alpha and starts to embrace a lot of the more kind of juicier CSS grid controls. But that's a really easy way to create a landing page. We've done a header, we've done a navigation, we've done a header, and we've done some kind of content boxes there, and with a nice lean structure as well. So let's just update that. I do a quick preview and see how that looks pretty good within that. I have to jump back now. See. And you should have switched that. Okay. There we go. Change the tab. Back to full screen. What's good about the new Flexbox and CSS Grid is that the things automatically update themselves on responsive mode. So we can have a quick look and see. So we can switch to tablet, now we get the, tablets are okay, but this one here. So now when we go into mobile, you can see the stuff automatically stacks. And of course, you can go in with Elementor controls and adjust all the margins and the heights and things for that. But for most cases, the Flexbox and the CSS Grid, they're doing all that automatically on their own. So you don't have to go in with as much adjusting for stuff. It just automatically fits switches to the content, which is nice. Okay, let me just stop sharing. Okay, so I don't want to run into too much stuff with that. I want to keep it really, really basic so you can see the core concepts as to what it's doing. For those, I got Clinton has his hand up. If you want to ask questions, you can go ahead. Clinton, you want to ask?
Yeah, thanks, mate. I might need you to share screen again, though. Just quickly, for example, under your headline and your subheader there in the hero, if you wanted to have two buttons under there, I've found sometimes I've got to drop another container in to have them side by side.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm doing that wrong or if there's a better way to have two buttons side by side, because if I drop two buttons in there because the direction's down in column, is that the only way to do it, or is there a better way?
Yeah, that would be the only way at the moment to do that using Flex, because it's only one dimensional, so you're only controlling the one way that the items flow in. So so they're going to flow in whatever direction you've got the container set as. Yeah. So if I drag buttons on there, there would be one there and one there.
Yeah. So you've got to drop an extra container under there to have them side by side. Yep.
No,
that's good. I just wanted to make sure I was doing it the right way. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries.
Will?
Yeah.
I was going to say, just on a note, I mean, yeah, that's how I do it as well. But there is a way to do it in one row. If you basically do it in Flexbox and you have US Space Force as a flex cell, it's 100% width. Then you add your heading text here as 100% width. It automatically puts it below. Then you put your button as 20% or whatever you want. It automatically puts it underneath. And then if you put another button, it'll go block, block, flow, flow, and it will just basically flow one under the other. It's not really.
I see. You're adjusting the width.
Yeah, because sometimes when I've had some quite complex layouts and I've just been doing it purely with Flex, you can do that and you can get some really interesting things happening because it literally will just flow to the end. And as you pointed out before, if you've got CSS Grid auto wrapping, it'll just go, no, can't fit. Add the second heading, go down to the next line. This is also 100% width. This button has to go underneath. This button's only 20%, and this button's only 20%, so they can sit side by side.
So is that like the old inline and then custom width setting you used to do?
Kind of, yeah. I said, yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep.
So we're talking about this. So you go in here and set it to full width.
Yeah, so that is
100%
as well.
And then put that as 100%.
Yep.
And then we're going to change the container flex to a row.
Yep.
There we go.
And that you haven't got wrap on. You've got to change that to flex. You've got to change your thing so it actually set to wrap. So down the bottom,
this one here. Yeah, so wrap. Okay, so we've got that. We'll forget about the spacing at the moment. And then you just add your buttons.
Yeah, just drag it in the bar. Yeah.
Cool. And duplicate that. There we go. So you can play around with I've got probably the wrong flex bit for those. Anyway, so we'll put the wrap on. We've made that 100%. We've made that 100%, so it's forcing it down onto the next line, and then you've got your two buttons. Yeah, that's a good trick. Thanks, Murray.
Thank you.
But I usually do it the way you do, Will, and usually because, as you pointed out with Flexbox, it's really just going in one direction. So I would always just go and add another container, because it also means that if you wanted to put like a background color behind those buttons to make them pop out a little bit more, then just having a container around them, just is so much easier to do, and it's actually less code than the old way that the intersections would have done it anyway. So it's actually a pretty good principle.
Yeah, and the intersections are useful. Well, they're kind of the only way that you can create control within another container. But now that you're using containers, it's less structure to go around. Michael's asking, can you explain again how you get the image to go real full width? I think that's more to do with the page setting that I'm on. So I'm using Elementor Canvas for that, and for the general settings. And that means, it's, if I do a preview for that, because I've got the whole thing set up, so it's like a full width, so it's going across the full width. So it's more about the type of page canvas that I've got rather than the image itself. Cool. It takes a little bit of getting your head around using Flexbox and Grid. Grid's going to be really complex once Elementor come up with the more UI controls for them. It's still in alpha just now, so it's just something to play around with. But Flexbox, I say, is pretty much good to go. It's a release candidate, so it's not going to change very much. So, I've already started using it on client sites, as a release candidate. Just a caveat, it could change, but it's unlikely. It's unlikely to. Yeah, so go around, play with your Flexboxes, get used to that. It's gonna be the way to go. Elementor's already starting to convert pretty much all the stuff. So if you use site templates, you'll find now that all your templates, your blocks and things, they're now containers for those. So it's going that way. Sections will be gotten rid of at some point, and it'll just become containers. But yeah, Flexbox is really, really powerful. I quite like it, and kind of getting used to CSS Grid a little bit as well. Murray?
I was just going to say something else that was interesting, and I mean, it'd be interesting to get other people's opinions on it. But with the other thing, when I pointed up with Flex Start and Flex End, they were getting rid of left and right because not everyone reads from left to right. And the idea was that you have Flex Start, Flex End, and if you design something where you want to put with what's on the left and what's on the right, if someone's reading in, say, an Asian or an Arabic location, by their browser will automatically revert. The Flex Start is over on the right-hand side, not on the left. And it'll automatically, using Flexbox, flow the content so it's more accessible to a person in their geographical location, which was when I first heard about it, I was like, what, left, right? And then when it dropped, I went, oh, okay, yeah, this is accessibility for people. So taking care of people that read from the bottom up. So you've got Flex, you've got flowing from row and row reverse and column reverse, especially where some people read from the bottom to the top. So it just basically means the information can flow more for the people where they're based in the world.
Yeah, absolute bonus. Yep. Plus, I love that you don't have to play around with margins and percentages, when you're trying to do these layouts, because that's just a nightmare for responsive design as well. So if you're doing these layouts with normal CSS, and you want everything to be equal height or the spacing between equal, then you have to revert to percentages. And then when you go into tablet, into mobile, and all the other viewports, then you have to adjust them all for all these different cases. Whereas Flexbox and CSS Grid, it does kind of that all automatically at the top level container view. So yeah, I'm loving that.
I will.
Yep.
If I can just think, one of the things I thought was really interesting was one of the big differences that I found between Flexbox and Grid is that when you showed your demonstration before, and you showed them from CSS Tricks, and it had block, block, block. And if, for example, you were using Flexbox and you put in 4 cells and you got to the end and the 4th one had to go down to the bottom, with Flexbox, you could make that sit in the middle. So it's nicely balanced. But with Grid, it would automatically go and sit in the first cell over on the Flex Start, whether it be the left or the right, depending on where you are in the world. You can't, please, if you know how to do this, this will be great, but you can't basically make something go into the middle when you're using CSS Grid. You can't automatically do that because it will automatically slot into the first cell on the next row, which if you've already defined that it starts on the left, it'll go to the left or the Flex Start.
Okay. I've not played around with CSS Grid that much to be able to kind of off the top of my head give you an answer, but yeah, it's something I can play around with and see.
Yeah, and it also doesn't have, they haven't got in the ability to have one cell and have it flow over 2 columns.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's, you can do it, you can actually just click on a cell and like, I think Imran from that, where's Imran's Flexbox, channel, the Flexbox guy? Yeah,
Web Squadron.
Sorry?
Web Squadron.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, how he can, where he'll go and click on a cell and then go and add some code and then get something to flow across to a number of cells and a number of columns. Whereas I'm just waiting for the put it in, because I know Oxygen's got it, and I think Bricks has got it as well, and a few others have as well. Just being able to, it shows you an actual cell by cell, and you can click on a cell and say, now stretch this across 2 and stretch this down, and everything just automatically flows around it.
Yep. So yeah, I think Elementor's on catch up with CSS Grid on quite a bit. Yeah, so I think that the newer ones that are coming out, is it Breakdance? Is Breakdance the new one that's coming out? Yeah, it's got all that visualization in there. So yeah, Elementor's doing a little bit of a catch up with this at the moment, but
it's still way better balanced as those other ones.
Yeah, Julia is asking, will we have to action something on our website so an Elementor will deploy the full conversion? Not sure, Julia. I probably wouldn't like to do that conversion automatically because, as I showed at the beginning, I don't know if you were there, if you convert sections to containers, it leaves redundant containers in there. So it's, it's probably useful to automatically convert everything, and then you have to kind of go back and modify it and get rid of all the redundant stuff. So I'm not sure if it'll come up with a site conversion. There's no mention of that yet, but yeah, definitely something to look out to. Clinton, you've got your hand up, or is that just from before?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make a comment a little bit off topic and thank you guys for these sorts of things. There's always something cool that you pull out of these groups. And it's going to sound stupid to some people, but it's something I didn't even realize. When you drop the image, with negative margin to bring it over the header, and and I knew the Z index, but previously I wasn't using the navigator to do that. So I'd go out, edit the header, change the Z index, bring it back up, make sure it was all right. So you've just taught me something really cool and quick. So thank you so much. It was cool.
No worries. Everyone takes away something different.
Yeah. It was great.
Okay, that's it. I'm going to wrap up for tonight. It's just after 7. Thanks very much for your questions. Thanks for your attention as well. Hopefully you found something a little bit useful. This is new territory, especially if you're an Elementor user. But I think it's important to pay a little bit of attention to get to know and play with Flex and the new CSS Grid, just to get yourself up to skill for those. Next month, I've not got any topics at the moment for next month, so keep an eye on the meetup group and I'll have a look and see what I can do for next month, and I'll announce that probably in the next week. I'm a bit busy at the moment. So, but August, we're going to be talking about, let me just see, August is going to be mega menus. So we've got John back from his travels, so he's going to be talking about creating mega menus in August, and I'll see what I can do for next month. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. Take care, have a lovely month, and I'll see you all next month.
Wonderful.
Bye, everyone.
See you later. Thank you.
See you guys.